Okay, our next reader is going to be Stephen Lottridge. Stephen Lottridge received a 2017 Wyoming Arts Council Fellowship in Creative Nonfiction.
This essay was first written in August of 2013, and I'm reading the very first part of it. Garter snakes on the dike. A woman was jogging down a trail in South Africa. She was wearing a green tank top and matching shorts. Her brown running shoes blended with the color of the earth. Her amber hair swayed in a ponytail as she moved. The early morning air was sweet and cool. Her stride was easy, unhurried. Her breathing was steady and deep. Birds sang. The world seemed at ease, serene, Edenic. Suddenly, she broke stride, stopped, froze without knowing why. She was alert, anxious, confused, urgently aware of something, some danger. Silent, she scanned the ground. Then, she saw the cobra, beside the trail ahead, just out of striking range. She stood immobile, her heart thudding, stationary, waiting. Gradually, with time, the snake wove off into the bush. She backed up slowly, glancing behind her and then forward again. The snake did not reappear. She turned, still vigilant, and walked gingerly away. National Public Radio told this story to illustrate the fact that we primates have developed over millennia a special visual sensitivity to the presence of reptiles, especially snakes. According to research, we can be alerted to the proximity of a snake and somehow see it before our eyes consciously make it out. Other senses, such as smell and hearing, may originally have been implicated, but sight has become primary as we primates have evolved. This subtle acuity has been crucial to the survival of our species. We may not be consciously aware of it, just as we may not be overtly receptive to the many of the delicate communications our senses register. We may be too engrossed in the concerns of our daily lives to mark and attend to these messages. But this subliminal signal is always there, whether we heed it or not. One of the boons of living in Teton County, Wyoming, is that no poisonous snakes are native here. What we do have are small, beautiful garter snakes. Big ones run maybe 1.5 feet or 2 feet. I met one once up Game Creek who may even have been pushing a yard. Mostly, though, they cap out at something around 15 or 18 inches, so they're not that big as snakes go. They often have a warm orange stripe on their backs and robin's egg blue underbellies, the rest of their bodies being mostly light to medium brown. Their tongues are flashing ribbons of reddish lace, mobile and quick. Their eyes are a faceted black. The best place to see them, although they are everywhere, is on the dike along the Snake River. They live and breed in the rocks on the sides of the dike and down on the overgrown riverbed where the water no longer flows. They frequently come up onto the top of the dike to catch the sun and warm themselves, I suppose. Wherever they come they do, and lie there on the gritty flats, and that is where I often happen upon them. Garter snakes in Wyoming differ vastly from the Cape Cobra, of course. Even so, I often have what is evidently a typical primate survival response when walking on the dike. I will have a sudden awareness, not conscious really, more of a visceral sensation of something there. I may shy slightly and become inadvertently and intensely alert. I scan the ground, and then, and only then, do I consciously see the snake. Sometimes it is just sunning itself on the warmed earth. Most often, though, it is moving, working its way toward the side of the dike, disturbed perhaps by my footfalls or the dogs ranging. Maybe it is just on its own way, for its own reasons. I always stop to look and feel a certain quiver in my body. I don't experience fear exactly, although that is probably at the root of it. It is more like intense focus. I don't really know how to read snakes. A coiled rattlesnake, head up, rattles a quiver I can read. Then one just gliding along on its own business, that too I can read and let pass. But mostly not. not the way I can read dogs or even cats sometimes. So I focus, although on what, I am not entirely sure. Just focus for its own and evidently for my ancient survival's sake. I have actually come to feel quite friendly toward these little snakes. I am sure I would feel very different if they were cobras, but they are not. They do have a mild toxin in their saliva, but they are not a danger to humans. They do not usually act aggressively, although I did see a tiny one dart a quick little stab of a strike once when my younger daughter tried to poke her finger at its head. On the other hand, they don't seem particularly shy, they just act like themselves, part of the world we share. I don't know if that daughter of mine feels the same mildly anxious alertness that I do. She denied it when I asked her once, but then she is not excessively introspective. Whether she feels fear or not, she has proven herself eager to engage the snakes full on, to share the world with them physically and close up. If we see one, she darts after it and tries to pick it up. They are far charier of contact than she and try frantically to wiggle away. If she does manage to catch one, which she often does, she picks it up and holds it and examines it and lets it twine over her hands and arms. Once I left her in the care of a friend who had a son about her age. It was a rural area with lots of rocks and grass and ponds. When I came to pick her up, she was beside herself with excitement. She dragged me to one of the ponds where a handful of other children were gathered. She pulled me over to a small red and white cooler on the bank, exclaiming, "Look, Dad, look, see what I got." She bent over, her frilly pink dress aflutter in the breeze. As she opened the cooler, plunged her right hand inside and pulled out a great cluster of garter snakes. They were small, about a foot long, so she could clutch a bountiful bunch, even with her small hand. They writhed and twisted as she gleefully held them out toward me, Medusa's head on the end of her arm. My reaction was mixed, as you might imagine. I admired her sang-froid and delighted in her joy and enthusiasm. I also felt nervous and protective. I hid my uncertainty as best I could and joined in with her exhilaration and sense of accomplishment. She kept telling me that there were hundreds of them there and how she had caught more than anybody. As she went to put them back in the cooler, one escaped. Holding the remaining ones aloft in her right hand, she hopped over in her patent leather shoes and white socks and deftly caught the escapee with her left. She skillfully returned them all to the cooler, closing it carefully as she stuffed heads and tails back inside. She took pains not to hurt them. They were not only her captives, they were also her pets and playmates. In some small way, I adopt her approach to the snakes as mine when I walk on the dike. I experience myself as a brother to them, albeit a leery one. Sometimes I talk to them. I suppose, initially, I speak to ease my own primitive anxiety. Primate, reptile, uh-oh. By talking to them, I reassure myself of my own safety. I suppose I would offer to shake hands if they could, to show that I mean them no harm and to be persuaded of their good intentions. I haven't tried getting down and wriggling beside one as a way of peacefully joining it, although that bizarre idea has occurred to me. I comment on the weather and temperature, knowing that these things matter to them. I mention how glad I am to see them and compliment them on their beauty and grace. I often exclaim delightedly. I speak to calm them if they seem startled or in unnecessary haste or agitation. I admire their litheness and agility, and I tell them that I find the way they move over, around, and under impediments impressive. I am sweetly drawn to the flicking of their filigree tongues as I lean over them, and more often these days, I urge them off the dike. The dike this summer has become a place of reptile carnage. Thank you.